Chemistry time.
Now those are some delicious polyphenols, which are the reason for such great flavors and colors in teas. Welcome to Chemist Tea Time. Today, we will be delving into the basics of chemistry and the chemistry around us. First off, what is chemistry? Chemistry is simply the study of matter, the different properties and transformations that it can undergo. Matter, as we know, is anything that has mass and occupies space, such as this table or this teacup. Or we can get more specific and talk about molecules and atoms, where atoms are the smallest unit of an element and molecules are the smallest part of a substance comprised of atoms, such as a molecule of water or H2O, where a water molecule is comprised of both hydrogen and oxygen atoms. Chemistry is all around us and we experience it every day from either baking or if you have heartburn and you take an antacid. Both of these scenarios comprise of chemical reactions, and I can't wait to talk about these in more detail as we continue this journey into chemistry. However, before we get ahead of ourselves, let's first continue to build our foundation. Something to keep in mind is that the topics that we cover in chemistry build upon itself. So every concept we cover, we will continue to build on top of it. If at any point you forget a definition or a concept, make sure to revisit that lecture to refresh upon it, because it will make learning the upcoming topics easier to understand and grasp. You might be surprised with the next thing I say, but you have either unintentionally or intentionally been following the core guidelines for scientists known as the scientific method. This set of guidelines is centered around observations and experiments. Before an experiment is conducted, it first begins as a simple observation, which often leads to hypothesis, which is an explanation based on observations. Now that we have a hypothesis, experiments are designed to test the hypothesis. From here, the hypothesis can be tested to either support your hypothesis, or if it is not supported, then the hypothesis can be modified and the process can be repeated. Hence, why this process is cyclic. When a hypothesis has been repeatedly supported by experiments, it can in time be accepted as a theory. There's a lot of confusion that surrounds a scientific theory, and it is important to not confuse this with a hypothesis. A scientific theory has been repeatedly tested and supported by a significant amount of research and evidence. This means multiple individuals have extensively tested the hypothesis and has been accepted by many experts in the field and is accepted as a theory. Whereas a scientific law is a statement or an equation that describes a natural phenomenon. Let's use, for example, the discovery of penicillin to describe the different parts of the scientific method. The discovery of penicillin paved the way for the age of antibiotics, which are commonly used to fight infections. The credit for the discovery of penicillin goes to Alexander Fleming, who was a microbiologist. After returning from a family vacation, he observed mold in a petri dish that contained Staphylococcus, a bacterium that causes sore throats and boils. However, the interesting thing about this mold was the area around it did not have any bacterial growth. Well, based on this observation, it was thought that the mold secreted something that prohibited bacterial growth. Isolating and growing of the mold juice tested this hypothesis, which proved to be correct. He later isolated the antibiotic penicillin and he reported his results, which led to many more experiments to further validate his theory. You can use a scientific method to a certain degree on a regular basis, such as when you are troubleshooting something, such as when your car won't start. You instinctively begin to hypothesize what could be the underlying issues based on what you observe. You might even test out some of those hypotheses, such as, is it your car battery? If those tests are inconclusive, you try something else until hopefully you resolve the issue. Today's discussion covered some general topics that you might have already known or maybe not. But nonetheless, we introduced some important definitions and terms, and we have reviewed the scientific method. Thank you for joining me today on Chemist Tea Time.
Chemistry.